This is Grundle Rumble. This is a Triumph 2024 Scrambler 400x. Let's review the piss out of this bike. Now, if you've never seen any of my reviews, you may think I'm a little harsh. No, I'm not really harsh, I'm just realistic. I'm not trying to sell you a bike or blow smoke up your butt. I'm really just trying to give you the honest truth or opinion about this motorcycle, whether it's right for you or not. I bought this with my own money, I'm not sponsored, so let's get started. So to save ourselves some time, let's talk about who this bike is not for. If you're a speed demon looking to set some world records on the track or on the road, this bike is not for you. Likewise, if you do most of your riding off-road and some serious off-road trails, single track, etc., you might want to reconsider. And finally, if you're someone who likes to tour thousands of miles a day, iron butt is nothing to you, you have titanium butt, then you might want to consider another bike. So with all those negatives, who exactly is this for? Well, if you're a city commuter, this is an excellent bike to get around the city. If you're a casual off-roader, you don't do any serious stuff, but you do a little bit of mild off-roading, this will serve you very well. If you're a casual tourer, as long as you don't want to go super fast, then this will also serve you super well, whether you're a beginner or an advanced rider. Beginner riders, this was a great bike to start on. An advanced rider makes a small little just daily rider. All right, folks, so I got tired of making that high quality Hollywood level production, so I'm just going to go through a quick PowerPoint, and we're going to touch a bunch of areas on this Triumph. Here's a list of all the topics I'm going to cover. I'm going to go through each one and list the pros and cons. Now remember, these aren't weighted exactly the same, so if you see a lot of cons on a list, that doesn't mean it's necessarily deal breakers or anything. It's just things I've mentioned over my 7,000 miles of owning the bike. So on the engine, it's powerful enough. Again, it's not something where you're going to win any kind of speed record, but it's also not super weak. So it will definitely get up to 80, 90 miles an hour. Maybe in part 2, I can do kind of a speed test, a 0 to 60 or a 60 to 80 pull. Comment below if you would like me to do that. It's not super vibey after the break-in. So the break-in's about 610 miles or 1,000 kilometers, something like that. So the engine does smooth out progressively. After about 2,000 miles, it was actually way smoother than when I first bought the bike. I bought it brand new. Now this is up to 70 miles per hour, and I put real miles per hour. That's because your tachometer is about 5 miles per hour too fast, starting at around 50, maybe 45 or 50. So I'll be reading 75 on the tach. I'm really going 70, and it feels pretty good. Now, disclaimer, this is with a 15-tooth front sprocket. Highly recommended to do that unless you're doing super gnarly off-road. Another positive is there's a small boost at 6,500 RPM, which is actually where the red line is during the break-in period. Now, that boost isn't a giant thing, but it's a little bit of engine character. You'll feel a little bit more pull as you hit that power band at around 6,500 RPM. It also gets great gas mileage. I was measuring between 61 and 72 as my most recent with the 15-tooth front sprocket. That includes some interstate travel going 70, 75 miles an hour. So I'm not just babying the engine, but a lot of it is also highway stuff. Some negatives on the engine: it's a thumper. You're going to have these high RPM vibes. You're going to be limited realistically, and it's going to really start annoying you at around 80 miles per hour indicated or 75, again with the 15-tooth. You're going to want more power. That's with almost any bike, although it doesn't leave you really wanting, saying, oh, this is such a weak bike. Everyone always wants more power. And finally, it has low tractability. This means it does not like the low rev ranges like some of the adventure bikes with a 270-degree crank, etc. So you don't want to really lug this engine too much. Matter of fact, I've had a couple of stall outs because I just went so low and I thought it should be able to do it because I'm used to some of the other bikes. You don't want to do that on this bike. It likes to start revving and going at about 4,000 RPM, which sounds high if you're used to a cruiser, but that's nothing on this bike. Suspension, it's a cheap bike. You're not going to get high marks. It works, but there are some negatives. Number one, you've got low travel, about 6 point, maybe 5.9, 6.5, something like that. Look it up. Travel on front and rear. You can only do the preload on the rear, so there's not a lot of adjustment, and the front is actually very stiff. I've found out that if I run my tires about 5 PSI lower than recommended, it really softens up that front, the feel of the front. But once I discovered that a while back, I aired my tires all the way up, and that stiff suspension came back. I could feel every rock in the road. So it's going to be kind of hard to bottom out on this bike, even with that low travel, and I think that's why that suspension is fairly stiff. Maybe you can replace the oil. It's not something that's a deal breaker for me because, again, I'm not doing any crazy off-road stuff with this, and it's fine on the road. Brakes don't win any awards either. The rear are okay. The front are very wooden, and it's a hard squeeze to get the front to stop. As a matter of fact, my rear brake pads wore out way faster than my front brake pads. I'm still on the original front. I need to replace my rear brake pads because I was using it so much more often than the front because they were pretty effective. The front, again, is just a wooden squeeze. I think I'm going to get some centered brake pads to replace the stock ones. Now for tires and wheels, I think the 1970 combo is great for a hybrid setup. It allows you to do some mild off-road stuff. It allows you to do some great street stuff. Funny story, when I took my bike for a test ride, I nearly oversteered right into a corner because I was used to my Africa Twin 21-inch front wheel, and that had some very heavy steering. This bike is way more nimble than that, way lighter, and so it's great around the city or anywhere on the road, really. Tubeless tires, I love that. My 2018 Africa Twin, which I actually sold for this bike, had tube tires, and I will never ride a tube tire bike again. They are very annoying. Repairs are hard. Everything is harder about tubeless tires unless you want to air down. And this bike isn't meant for serious off-road where you would need to air down. The Metzler tires that come with it work okay. I had some buddies I was riding with that said, wow, you know, you're keeping up pretty good on those street tires. I'm like, yeah, they're okay for some mild off-road stuff. So don't think you're going to have to immediately swap the tires. That being said, your cast wheels are slower off-road. You're not going to be able to hit some of these bumps like you would with a spoked rim because you're going to bend that rim eventually. And again, it's just a smaller diameter. 19 is smaller than 21. So you're going to have to slow down a little bit on some of the larger obstacles. And the tires are weak off-road. I definitely found the limit, which is how I crashed. The first time I crashed my bike going up a big hill, I just hit some loose stuff and the tires just didn't have the grab. Again, that's where you'd probably want to get a more aggressive setup if you're going to do more off-road, especially in loose stuff. Ergonomics and comfort, now this is going to be very subjective. The stock seat is actually fairly comfy for some shorter rides, maybe an hour or two. After that, you're going to start feeling it. So it's not the worst seat in the world. It's definitely not the best seat in the world, but it is pretty good. The rider triangle is pretty good. I'm 6 feet tall, or 182.88 centimeters. I do feel slightly cramped again after a long ride, but for the most part, I like the rider triangle. The posture is very neutral. You sit mostly up. Wide handlebars are great for controlling the bike, getting good lean in. It's got good shift action, so it's not really a clunky shifter. Sometimes it can be a little tricky to find neutral, more than some bikes because of the shift action is very small. But overall, it's great shift action. If you start to get roughed on shifting, you might want to change your oil. And it comes with tank pads on the side, which are actually really useful for any kind of downhill action or steering the bike with your knees and leaning, etc. I love having the tank pads. Now I put a slash here because it's a Pro or a Con on the full wind experience. So you have to realize if you live somewhere cold that you're going to have no protection whatsoever from the elements, and you're going to get that full wind therapy, which is great on a hot day, but sometimes is horrible on a cold day. Additionally, when you're riding a long ways and you're going to do some really long distance touring at high speeds, that's why I put it as a negative at the beginning of the video, because that wind is just going to beat you up. It's clean wind, but it's just a lot of wind. And so if you're keeping it 65 miles an hour or so or less, no big deal. But once you start to get above that, you're going to wish you had more wind protection. And the foot pegs are a bit small, so I've scraped my boot multiple times before I've scraped my foot peg. That's just something that comes with the bike, easily replaced. Controls and indicators are easy to understand and operate. You literally have one button to go through all your controls. It does have an engine immobilizer, which is potentially a good thing unless it breaks, but it's kind of rare to see an engine immobilizer on a bike that's not this inexpensive. And the high beam switch, I don't know if you know, but the high beam switch on this bike, you use your index finger and it's on the front of the handlebar instead of the rear like a lot of bikes. I actually much prefer this. When I first started riding the bike, it really was annoying. I kept going off-road and was hitting my high beam. Once I adjusted to it, I love the location of that high beam switch versus my other bikes that have it where you operate it with your thumb. Now here's some negatives. The tach max is 9.5. The max readout is 12 though. So on the tachometer, it goes up to 12, but you actually only max at 9.5. That's just kind of lazy on Triumph's part. I don't know why they did that. Single button operation does get annoying because it slows everything down. You have to hit buttons to loop through the menu, then you have to press and hold, then you have to hit and press and hold, etc. It's just really slow. I wish there was an up down in addition to that one button. So the one button could be enter, up down could be scroll. There's no cruise control. It's a throttle by wire bike, but it's no cruise control. That's really not surprising. But then again, if they have an engine immobilizer on a bike this cheap, why can't they put cruise control? And this is a minor issue, but you can't reset the service indicator. So if you happen to change your own oil, you're going to have this little oil icon sitting on your dash. Now it's not lit up, it's not bright or anything, it's just an LCD outline, but it's still something that I wish Triumph didn't do. Maintenance. This is actually one of the largest dings against the bike. There is no center stand option. There are no holes to even mount a center stand to it. Now combine this with the next negative, the chain is next to exhaust, means it is really kind of a pain in the butt to get to this chain. You're going to need a paddock or something to prop the bike up to spin your rear chain, and then you're going to have to squeeze in between the wheel and the exhaust to get to that chain without a center stand. It's just something I wish Triumph, I don't know what they were thinking. Also, to me, is an overcomplicated oil swap. I'm used to the screw-on filters from my Japanese bikes. One lug nut, maybe two to drain the oil. You put on a crush washer, you have a spin-on filter. This bike uses two mesh sub-filters that you have to take out in addition to the main filter. Then you have to clean those filters out, and then you have an O-ring kit that they say you're supposed to swap every time you do an oil change. That's just added extra cost and just extra complexity. That's something that, to me, I don't understand why this is. I know my WR250R Yamaha uses the little plug-in filter, but it doesn't have all those O-rings. I don't know why it's so complex on the Triumph. Now here's some problems I experienced and other people have experienced on the Triumph Facebook group. Very rarely there is a downshift or a stall. Now, a lot of times this was happening to users between third and second or second and first. I think it was third and second. There's a downshift. For some reason, the engine would stall. It's not all the time. It's pretty rare, but it did happen to multiple people. Now, there was an ECU update. I just got mine flashed. And I can tell what Triumph did is they lowered the throttle cut to the injectors when you downshift. So you can tell that it's keeping a higher rev than normal. But I still stalled at a stoplight. What I did was I was trying to do basically a stoppie and stop without putting my feet down at a stop sign and then go. I shifted in the first, and I think I confused the ECU and it stalled. Now, again, this is extremely rare. This is not a deal breaker. And a matter of fact, both times it's happened to me, it happened when the engine was still kind of cold. So it may be something to do with the engine just not fully warmed up yet. And another thing on the Metzlers, I had a tire punctured by a small thorn, a goat head thorn that's out here in the desert. I've never had any other tire on any of my bikes actually punctured by a thorn. So it tends to me like maybe the inner wall of those Metzlers is a little bit thinner or weaker than normal. Or maybe I just got really unlucky and it went right between the treads down to the base of the tire and punctured. It had ended up in a slow leak. I used some slime and it fixed it right up, but just something to mention. Now you may be thinking, with all those negatives, why would I even recommend this bike? Well, there's a feeling and fun factor that stats really don't capture. Number one, it looks really good. It's a good looking bike. There's not very much I would actually change about that bike stock off the floor. I love the brown and the green and the white. I would maybe get rid of some of the silver parts. I wish they would have blacked those out, but that's just personal opinion. It's very flickable because you're lower to the ground than, let's say, a big adventure bike. It only weighs 400 pounds, which seems like a heavy for an off-road bike, but it carries its weight very well. It has that 1970 hybrid setup, so it's very flickable. I love it. It's just a fun bike to ride. You can ride it like you stole it. You can just wring that thumper's neck. You're not going to go anywhere that you don't want to. It's very forgiving, so you don't have to worry about whiskey throttle. I would have no problem giving this bike to a beginner rider. Yes, I mean, I guess people will find a way to surprise you and mess things up, but for the most part, this isn't going to just take off on you like a leader bike, right? It seems to be there's a little bit of delay in the throttle. Maybe that's the ECU mapping. Maybe it is just the lack of power because it's only a 400. So I'm not sure why it acts like that, but I like it. So it's a good bike to learn on. But it's not so limiting that an advanced rider wouldn't have fun, because again, you get that little bit of a characteristic boost at the 6500. It's just a great little riding bike. It is on and off-road capable. Again, the off-road chops aren't super great, and the on-road, you're not going to do 500, 1,000 miles in a day on this thing, but it is a great mix of both, and that's why I like it, especially around here. There's all kinds of trails that I can ride on my way home from work. It's not actually too expensive. Out the door, I think I paid $77,000, I think, maybe $7,100. This was back in 2024. That's out the door. So the sticker price plus all the fees, all the assembly, etc. So it's pretty good, and it's good build quality. So you've got the Triumph build quality. I was pretty surprised. It was a very nice, well-built bike, and I recommend it. So what is the final score? Final rating is 4 out of 5 Grundles. I think had Triumph given us a center stand, that's really my biggest sticking point, is the center stand or lack thereof. I think it would get another half point for that. Everything else has been very minor. Again, taking into consideration what the bike is intended to do, it's just a small scrambler, good for some street, good for some off-road, not excellent in either, but for the most part, it does really well on street and off-road. Again, within its limitations and its design characteristics. Comment below if you have this bike and if you love it, if you have any problems. Do you agree or disagree? Do you want to see a version 2 where I do some on-road and off-road? Thanks so much.